Today, we're making a delicious, a meaty, a spicy chili con carne. Let's go. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're making one of my all-time favorite, I'd say cold weather dishes, but I like it all year round. We're making chili con carne, chili with meat, beef specifically. I guess you could use other types of meat, but the way I'm gonna make it, beef works best. So there's a few different ways that I like to make my chili that I think take it from being pretty good to being outstanding. One is to use big chunks of beef. We'll talk about that when we get there and why I like it. The other reason is these little guys. This is a dried chili. Now, I'll admit, the first time I used dried chilies, I was a little intimidated by them, wasn't quite sure how to use them. Turns out they're really, really easy to use, and they take your chili from being good to being fantastic. And you can customize them. There's so many different kinds of dried chilies out there. In today's video, we're gonna talk about some of the key characteristics of chili, how to use them, and how to personalize your chili so you get exactly what you want. Let's jump in the kitchen and let's make my chili con carne. So to create our chili powder, I guess, is what we're gonna start off with. We're gonna use a couple of different kinds of chilies. There are 3 different flavor profiles that we need to be aware of and we need to balance or optimize for depending on our tastes. We've got a hot chili, we've got something that's fruity, and something that's smoky. But let's talk about each of them one by one. Let's start off with the cascabel chili. This is a chili, it's pretty small, and if you shake it, you may not be able to hear that, but it rattles. It's often called a rattling chili. This falls in the smoky line. It's really not very hot, but will add a smoky flavor to our dish. So that's why we're including cascabels. This one is a pasilla chili. It's often called a little raisin because of the color and sort of the shriveledness of it. This is one of the most popular chilies in Mexican cuisine. It's in moles, salsas, great to go in our chili. This one has a little bit of heat to it, but it's mostly added into our dish to give a fruity type of flavor. And then last but not least, we have arbol chilies. And these little guys, usually the smaller the pepper, the spicier it is. The arbol is on the hot category. So we're gonna be a little bit careful with adding these. I wanna go a little bit on the spicier side with my chili, not too crazy, so I'm gonna add a couple of them. The key with creating a chili powder is learning what you like and learning what you want to include in your chili. We're trying to mix smokiness, fruitiness, and spiciness or hotness into one chili powder. Knowing that, we can choose what kind of chilies that we want to use. I'm gonna start by splitting my peppers in half and de-seeding them. I'm not wearing gloves. You probably should be wearing gloves. I don't have any, but make sure you don't touch your eyes or really any other body part because these things pack a punch. Once these are de-seeded, I'm gonna go wash my hands and we're gonna go to the stove. Dry pan, I'm gonna set this over medium-high heat or so. Add my dried chilies that have been all cut up into about the same size into the pan. Toast these until they start to smoke or so. This should take about 90 seconds or so. So after about 90 seconds, I can see them starting to smoke. I can smell them as well. Their flavors are already starting to come out. Let's take these out. And this is an old coffee grinder that I use to grind up spices. Lid goes on and pulse this until we get a powder. I'll be very, very careful opening this. The number of times I've gotten this chili powder in my eyes or up my nose, it's not fun. They're not all quite broken down yet. A few more pulses. This should be good. That's a homemade chili powder. Let's turn this into a paste for our chili. Add my chili powder. I'm using a bit of cocoa powder, a little bit of corn flour or masa harina, some ground cumin, some dried oregano, and a little bit of cinnamon. Mix this all together to combine it. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of stock to make this into a paste. Let's set this aside. So for the beef, I've got these pieces of cubed beef, fairly decent size. They're not huge and they're not small. I prefer this to ground beef because you're gonna end up with a pretty decent size in every single bite as opposed to sort of little tiny pieces of beef. We're gonna generously season our beef with salt and pepper. Make sure everything's coated. Okay, into the stove. Into a large pot, a little bit of neutral flavored oil on the bottom. Get some heat on this. Once this is hot, I'm gonna sear off my beef. Work in stages so that you're not overcrowding the pan. You're looking to get some really nice color on all sides of the beef. All right, once we've got some nice color on all of the pieces of beef, let's take them all out. We'll set this aside. Oh, there's a few more pieces in here. There we go. I'm gonna turn down my heat just a little bit. Touch more oil because the pot's a little dry. I'm gonna add some chopped white onion and some chopped jalapeno. Sweat this briefly in the same pot. 4 garlic cloves that I'm going to use a microplane grater and grate those in here. Get all of that out of there. Stir. Okay, I'm gonna deglaze this with a beer. Any type of lager works. Okay, we wanna scrape up all those delicious brown bits that were on the bottom from the beef. And I've got some cored tomatoes. I've basically just taken out the center. There's a few seeds left. You could use a can of tomatoes here if you wanted. A little bit of brown sugar. And then I'm gonna put beans in my chili. These are pre-cooked beans. If you don't like beans in your chili, you don't have to add this, but I'm gonna put beans in mine. Add in all my browned beef, not ground beef. And the spice paste that I made at the beginning. Stir this all around. Finish this off by covering with a bit of beef stock. Bring this up to a simmer. So once we start to see a couple of bubbles and some movement, we are ready to drop the heat on this. We're gonna let this simmer for 2 to 3 hours. We want it to be thick and we want the beef to be fully cooked. So our chili has been simmering away here for about 3 hours. We have something that's really rich and dark brown. Our meat is completely cooked and really, really tender, and it smells just incredible in here right now. Let's finish this chili off. So the last thing we need to do is check this for the seasoning. Oh, it's got some spice to it, that's for sure. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt and a bit of apple cider vinegar. Right, that vinegar is really, really good. It really brightens everything up sort of right away. Let's do a plate. I'm gonna add a bit of sour cream, a little bit of cheddar cheese, and some chopped cilantro. This is a bowl of chili con carne. One of my favorite parts of this recipe is that you get these big chunks of meat. That's why I like keeping them so big at the beginning. It's really good. The beef is really, really tender. After 3 hours of cooking, it really should be. A little bit of spice to it, certainly not overpowering. Adding the vinegar at the end really helped balance things out. Really a lot of depth of flavor. At the dried chilies, you get a much, much better end product than if you were to just use chili powder that's off the shelf. So that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed today's recipe, hit the thumbs up button, really helps out the channel. Subscribe if you want to see more videos. Aside from that, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Ooh, does have some spice to it. I don't think there's a better cold weather dish out there than chili con carne.